Tiffany is asking, how do I work with my body stress reactions that are entrenched in my relationship with my sister? The relationship is no longer as fraught as it was, but my body and mind have a hard time updating to what is true now. Less conflictual, but not close. And I just spent a week with her and her two daughters in Germany, so it's up right now. Hi, Tiffany.
Hello.
Where shall we start? What do you already know?
So hard to pick some salient points here. Okay. She and I have had a really rocky relationship for many, many, many years at this point.
Mhm.
And what I'm noticing, or what I noticed in this visit, was we had a couple of conversations, and both of us have more capacity now than we used to have. So what we were able to notice is like slow down when we were at a point where it could escalate and be
Mhm.
like, okay, what's happening here? One of those
Mhm.
points, I just had a moment of honesty, which I'm not always honest, and said, it kind of feels like you're lecturing me right now because she asked me, I noticed you're like making faces. What are you doing? What's happening? And so what I noticed though is my stress response just goes crazy at any hint of conflict, or she's about to tell me another thing I've done wrong, another mistake I've made, another way I've hurt her, another way I've messed up. Because we have this
Mhm.
pattern of, I don't meet her expectations. And so I feel hurt. I pull back. It's that kind
Mhm.
of push and pull back more. She feels more
Mhm.
hurt. I've done more wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So
Mhm.
yeah, and my body reactions and like feeling sort of pulled into those old dynamics that are not fully like so intense anymore, but I
Mhm.
think are still there a little bit. Just
Yeah.
making it's a lot to try
Well, let
and
me tell you what I'm tracking, and then we'll just figure out what I'm missing and go from there. Yeah. First, I just want to say it makes a lot of sense. And I just want to name this dynamic that you're bringing in because I think a lot of people probably feel this. Our minds can update reality much more quickly than our bodies. So even though I might know in my head that things are different now, I'm not little anymore, I'm not as vulnerable anymore, she's changed, I've changed, like my mind might get that. Our bodies haven't gone through the same status updating. And so it will continue to generate memories of all the things that were painful or that were, like the criticism or the control or the rejection or whatever it is. It will still remember that. You'll notice your body tensing up and bracing against the potential for that to come again. And so then that can feel like a little disconnect, like, wait, I know one thing, but my body is doing another thing. And I just want to name that's a very common thing for us to go through. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm hearing a lot of resources that you already have available. Like you have a lot of awareness. You're tracking and noticing what's happening in your system. You're sorting out what is in the now and what is in the past. You are able to name things in the moment, and so is your sister. You're both beginning to have a little bit more meta conversations about, well, what is happening right now? What is arising in the space? I mean, these are actually pretty big steps already. Yeah. What's it like to hear me outline that for you?
yeah, it acknowledges the progress that we have made and the context of our lives too, because I
Hmm.
think for a couple of years, we basically stopped contact because we just could not face for each other at all.
Yeah.
So it's nice to acknowledge there's been some forward progress to the point that we could spend a week together and
Yeah.
not have any massive blow ups or shutdowns. I think the other thing that's coming up too is I'm confused about where we are
Hmm.
because she keeps a calm demeanor, but she can get very icy and cold and cruel. And the feedback she gave me is I look totally calm and normal until I explode or shut
Hmm.
down completely.
Hmm.
And she alluded to the fact that there's still a lot of things that she's just put on a shelf and not processed. And then named a few things that I did wrong again and made her mad and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And then I just have these reactions again because I know it's pinging into all of these experiences that have been so painful.
Hmm.
The moment
Hmm.
we're dealing with right now is not that
Hmm.
big of a deal, but I'm just,
Hmm.
yeah. So I think I do have a lot of experience of paying attention to my body and working with it.
Hmm.
This is just the hardest relationship I have. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah. There's so much history and it's so high stakes and it matters so much. Yeah. And it's a relationship that has memories from different developmental stages in you. There's a lot of younger parts who are remembering things from when you had less resources available to protect yourself than you do now. Yeah. My mind's going so many places all at once. One, I want to acknowledge in your story the role, the really life affirming role of going no contact for a while. Sometimes people will see a no contact as a complete rejection and abandonment of a relationship. And while that does sometimes happen, I just want to remind everyone, like what you're describing, this period of it's too painful, it's too overwhelming. I can't stay in the consciousness that I need. I don't know how to protect myself or orient myself internally. It's too triggering. I'm going to go no contact for a while so that I can do my own healing work and increase my own capacities. And then my intention is to come back later and see what may or may not have changed. And hopefully, you, dear other person, will also do that. It can actually be a very loving thing to do for a relationship, to give everybody a break. The consciousness of that kind of no contact is basically we're going to take a break from one another. We're each going to go do our own awareness, healing, and growth work. And then let's come back together when we both feel like we have more to give than that we need. And let's see where we're at. And then we do another run at it and we get a new status update. And then maybe we take a break again for a while. And I just want to normalize some of that because it can help with what you were even saying earlier, like you've learned to slow it down. It's a way of slowing down the repeating of cycles that we're trying to change. So this was a really beautiful example of how no contact can be very pro relationship, as long as it's some of the conditions that you're describing. So a few other things that I'm thinking about have to do, I'm picking up that there's still some pain and self-protectiveness that comes up for you, that you're wanting to trust yourself to keep yourself safe because some of the dynamics can be re-triggering, but you're also wanting to stay in connection for a little bit longer. Is that accurate? Would you say that differently?
Definitely the self-protective part. It is
Okay.
what I'm realizing as we're talking is I have a big question around what do I want to be available for at this point and what don't, because what I don't, and do I like, where do I get to have a voice relationship? Where do my needs get to matter? Because it feels like her needs take up all the air in the room. And when I bring my needs forward, I feel like I get rejected in really harsh ways. It feels like the terms of engagement are like, show up the way I want you to, and I need you to, but don't tell me, and I'm sure this is exaggerated in my brain, but don't tell me about your pain. Don't tell me about your challenge. But on the other hand, she's telling me, do tell me about your pain. Do tell me about your challenge. I want to know, but then if I do, then I feel rejected. So yeah, there's a lot underneath the surface of I desperately want a connection with her, and it feels entirely unsafe.
Yeah, it's painful. And it sounds like one of the core pain points is this question of, do my needs matter? And having had an experience of I need to put my needs away and only tend to your needs in order for me to have a relationship with you. And that feels painful. That feels like a kind of self-sacrifice that I don't want to do anymore. That's legitimate.
And I think when I started drawing those boundaries of I'm not actually going to set everything aside in my life and tend to you, that's when all the conflict arose and so it's just been hard since then.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you are in a process of setting new terms of engagement. And I'm going to springboard off of what I think I've heard you say, and then I'm going to give you what mine would be, and then you figure out where yours are. Okay. But I think part of what you're saying is to your sister, I want a relationship with you where both of our needs matter, where we can talk about the things that haven't worked in the past and find a way forward that works better for both of us. I want to be available for processing and being there for each other and finding a new way forward. And the places where I may need to withdraw or remove myself for a while have to do with when I am being blamed or I'm told that I am not good enough or that my needs don't matter, or I'm being judged, or I get the perception of being rejected. When those kinds of things start coming up, that becomes painful. What I would say as a little editorial comment to you, separate from that, is one of the things you can do in the background is really practice not taking it personally. Instead of, I have to put my needs aside, it's always about her, I start thinking, oh, this is one of the places where we've reached the limits of her capacity to be present to me. She doesn't have the capacity right now to be present to my needs She doesn't have the capacity right now to provide empathy for what I might be needing. She's moved into a place where she is self absorbed. And I don't mean that in a bad way, just as a descriptive way. She's currently so absorbed in her perceptions and feelings and memories, she's not available to me in the way that I need her to be. So I would find a way of describing it to my own nervous system more neutrally and in less of a, this is the terrible thing that is happening to me again, which is how younger selves and me will want to experience it. I'm being judged, I'm being rejected. Once again, I'm not good enough. Like there's a part of us that developmentally needed to take that all personally. And that part is going to suffer more than necessary in the now, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense what I'm trying to point to? How's that landing?
Yeah, that's super, super helpful. I think that what I'm pulling really attaching to is like practicing and really like probably journaling and literally practicing some
Mhm.
neutral ways to describe these
Yeah.
moments that arise for us. I think inside of the moment, I can hold that. I can be like, yeah, she hasn't had capacity for 12 years, and I don't know when or if she will have capacity. So
Yes.
then what do I want to do with that? I
Yes.
think you opened
Exactly.
a pathway for me of no, I just need to be more honest. And I've struggled with how do I do that in a way that I'm not going to freak out and that has the highest likelihood of being heard. So I think some of the wording that you gave me is helpful of here's what I want, here's what
Hmm.
I'm available for, and the times that I'm going to need to just take some space for myself is
Hmm.
when XYZ is happening.
Hmm.
Like I think that's a neutral and kind way to express
Hmm.
it. And then she'll hear what she hears
Hmm.
and we can go from there. So
Hmm.
yeah, the neutral description of what's happening, not I will never be enough. And here we go again. And I'm always bad. I'm always
Hmm.
wrong. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter what I do. There's that track. So
Yes, yes. And I would give that track a country to live in, meaning find a journal and be like, this is my old track. Here, this is my archive of fears, because that voice in you wants to be included. We don't want to just suppress it, repress it, throw it away, tell it it's wrong. We actually, at least in this kind of process, we make room for all the voices. We just manage them differently, right? So I would still let this younger voice who has a lot of fears based on things that actually happened and that were true at some point for her. This part of you needs empathy from you. She needs to be seen. She needs to be known. She needs to be validated. She needs to be acknowledged. And you don't want her running your life anymore. Does that make sense? This is a process of including all parts, not vilifying or pathologizing any of the voices. But then also, it's the self leadership part of deciding who's going to be the decision maker. And that's the part who's talking. You and I are talking to the decision maker today, the one who's like, wait a minute, I have this unruly inner landscape and I'm trying to figure out what to do with all of this, right? And one thing is we don't make any of the parts inside of ourselves wrong. And then that also supports us in not needing to make the sister wrong. And this practice of trying to describe things neutrally, one of the ways that that's actually an incredible act of self care for ourselves is that when we begin to describe things as they are, without needing to make them worse or better than they actually are, because we can get distorted both ways. We can put on like everything is so much better and we can be in complete denial. It's a complete defense. We're not in touch with anything that is real because we just need to put rosy colored glasses and everything. And then if we really go down the road of like psychosis, we start thinking that just because I've put on rose colored glasses, I've now changed reality out there, right? So we don't want to do too much of that. And we don't want to frighten ourselves with nightmares and memories of things that are not real anymore. That otherwise we keep them alive in a way that doesn't allow new things to arise in the moment. And so the practice of, let me just describe what's happening, what is happening, what is being said. And if I can frame things up not as people's inherent goodness and badness, but more about people's capacities. What stage of development are they in? Again, neutrally, like I'm just going to say you're in eighth grade. That doesn't mean that you're less or worse than somebody who's in third grade or somebody who's in graduate school. But it gives me a sense of what is the level of my functioning right now. And all of us go through all stages. At least I hope everybody continues growing. Some people just decide to stay at a very comfortable early stage, but let's encourage people to keep going. And then when I frame it as a limitation and a capacity, I'm not taking it so personally. and I'm able to extend a little bit more generosity and compassion to the other person, then I'm not needing them to be different to meet my needs either, which is the thing that I have found painful for them doing to me, which is needing me to be different to meet their needs. How are some of these ideas landing?
Yeah, super helpful. A lot to
Mm,
chew on and think about, I think. And I think just recognizing the that we're just in different places of understanding. That was one huge thing that came through.
mm,
The idea of I have trained myself for many, many, many years to try and move towards needs and feelings rather than good,
mhm,
bad. Of course, that shows up.
mhm,
But she's very much like we're trying to relate from different places. She's
mhm,
trying to say, like, when we're talking, she's like, was I being an asshole to my husband when you watched? Like, there's very much that good, bad lens. And like, that's what, and so I fall on the spectrum for her on a good, bad
mhm,
lens. So that
mhm.
was just helpful for me to name of like, we're
Totally,
seeing the world differently,
totally.
relate differently. We're
Yeah.
just missing each other.
Yeah.
So like,
One of
hey,
the things I find useful when I'm working with the vast majority of people who still think that way, okay, is I think about when somebody says like, am I the asshole? I use that as translation practice for myself, right? And I think, oh, I think what they mean is there something for me to pick up here? Because I actually want to contribute in a positive way. And it's a casual way of saying, what part of this is mine? And the fact that I'm asking what part of this is mine is also evidence of my desire to grow and learn and contribute to a better process between the two of us. And when I can get that in my consciousness and I can hear that that's what the person is really saying through, am I the asshole? My system relaxes and I'm like, yeah, you are the asshole. Here's what I think. Or no, I don't think you are. In fact, the fact that you're asking if you are the asshole is one of the things I love about you. It empowers us to work with people as they are. We don't need them to say it differently because we can understand, we can see through it. And then we can respond, in whatever way we like. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, oh, it sounds like you're wondering if there's something for you to pick up here, and I can just translate it that way and use the language that I find more natural as a very gentle invitation to have them think about it differently with me. And then I get data. They either want to or they don't. So people are always talking in code, and we can, if we want to, we can do a lot of decoding without needing them to be different. Neutral observation is one, translating into underlying feelings and needs is another, asking for what we're really wanting is another. The basic tools of nonviolent communication are incredibly helpful here. Yeah.
thank you. This was
Yeah,
really
you're welcome.